moving to something that's really really unique to you in your personal journey and your personal story. In your book, Not Afraid,
Mhm.
you write about an experience that most people can't even imagine in their worst nightmare. I mean, it's like we talk about these things,
Right.
but just reading that story as a father, as a husband, as a person who has bills to pay and so forth.
Mhm.
So for people who don't know, in 2011, barely a year after giving birth to your baby daughter, your wife and life partner, Elizabeth, passed away from a brain tumor,
Mhm.
leaving you to take care of your daughter alone, which as a man and as a father, I know how totally useless and terrified we are as caregivers initially. I can only imagine. A couple months later, your teaching hours get slashed. You realize you probably won't get tenure, which is something that you were expecting. And so here you are, single dad, just lost the love of your life, financial prospects diminished. You have to fight with the bank just to keep your home.
Yep.
And as you write, hell was a ninja who entered my house without being seen. But then, remarkably, you write this. So you write, before all of this happened, I used to be very careful. I'd strategize and play it safe. And then I realized that no matter how safe I played it, horrible things could happen anyway. So I began diving into things with less hesitation than ever before. I mean, talk about resilience. I mean, this really floored me when I read this passage. I mean, how did this shifted mindset take shape for? I mean, people crumble and
Yep.
get paralyzed for a lot less than people lose their minds and feel unsafe over a mean tweet today,
Right.
right? But somehow you go through this nightmare and you almost shift it into a call to action to dive into life with more energy and zest. I mean, tell us a little bit. How did you make this happen? How did you live through this transition?
I think oddly enough, sometime major terrible experience are somehow easier to deal, at least on some level, than minor ones. Because minor ones, you still have attachment to the way you want things to be, and they're just this thing that just ruined your day or your week or your month or your year. But that hasn't really shaken your vision of the world or your sense of safety or all those things. You're just mad because this thing is pissing you off. When something is just more earth shattering, you have nothing to remain attached to. You have nothing to hold on to, or kind of like, so in some way, you're like, okay, I'm still here. I'm not dead, but I have to deal with the fact that all this stuff, just as whatever I thought was very solid, just got blown to pieces. So, in an odd kind of way, while it's horrifying and it's terrible and it's hard and it's stressful and all of those things are true, there's an element of it where you also feel really oddly relaxed because you're like, what else can it's like, and don't get me wrong, it can always get worse, right? So that's always a bad question to ask what else can happen, because trust me, more can happen. But still, there's that feeling of like, what's left to be afraid of? What's left to be worried about is like all this terrible shit that in my worst nightmare I would have a hard time compiling is all happening at once. Now what? And
Mm.
so, and it's a strange thing because it's now what, it's both real and not real, in the sense that on one level you are liberated and you actually tap into more energy than you think you had, because you're liberated from fear, you're liberated from all those things that you are like praying that things don't end up in a certain way, but they just did, so you have nothing left to be stressed about. On
Mm.
the other hand, there is the fact that it's tragic and it is bring its own level of stress and all of it. So it's like weird. It's simultaneously both things at once. On one hand, you're getting wrecked. On the other, you tap into this other energy that can actually help you enjoy small things. Like one thing that freaked people out a lot early on is that I would laugh a lot in those days. Like I would, like even just in the first few days, weeks, months, because at the end of the day, it was like, yeah, terrible shit have happened, do happen, continue to happen, but that doesn't mean I cannot enjoy right now. You know what I mean? That was a funny joke. That made me laugh. I'm gonna enjoy that one. Doesn't really change the bigger picture, but also doesn't mean that every single second of every single day needs to be hell. You know?
Mm. So it's almost like what I'm hearing is like, so there's a forced detachment
Mm-hmm.
from the things that you knew, like your structure, but maybe also a forced detachment from your fears, because a lot of our fears are theoretical. And that's what paralyzes us, is all the fears that may happen. And now it's like when the worst happens, you're almost like detached from your fear. And the other thing I'm hearing is when all hell is breaking loose, you just maybe are forced to like hyper focus more on the present and the here and now, and maybe just appreciate the little things, because that's what you need to keep going. And is that accurate? Like that
100%.
detachment from your certainties?
Yeah. Because there's not, in many ways, like fear is born from hope. It's because you have a hope that certain things turn out that way, and you badly want them to turn out that way, that then you're afraid that it may not. But if you are in a place that's fairly hopeless, but it's not, you're not getting tortured by ISIS on a daily basis. It's hopeless on another level, where it's like, it's somewhat comfortable on a, well, kind of, not really, but like there's at least some breathing room there for you, but it's also feel kind of hopeless. Well, then also fear gets out of the window, because it's like, what's there to be afraid of? It's like, there's nothing you're hoping for. You're not like holding on to a hope, so you also don't have much fear.
And also being needed. I read it in your book, being needed by your daughter and being there for her invested so much meaning and purpose in your life, that it was just like a mission that you can sort of hold on to in the middle of all of this, and just kind of get a lot of directionality and a lot of hope from that.
Yeah. And in fact, it's oddly enough, when things get better, then you remember this stuff and your attachment grows again, and you feel, and actually fear comes back through the back door, right? Because suddenly now you have something to lose. Now you're like, whereas at the beginning it feels like, well, I mean, sure, it can always get worse, but like after a while you get a discount on tragedies. If you pile up 5 in a row, the fifth one doesn't feel as bad as the first. When you give it enough time, now there's stuff to lose. It's like a brand new tragedy, and that can mess you up again.